Hi, my name is Lindsay Slayton. I chose to do my book review on Shadow of the Almighty by Elizabeth Elliot about the life and testament of Jim Elliot, her late husband. Jim Elliot had always been interesting to me. I love Elizabeth Elliot, and so to hear her talk about Jim, he was such an amazing man, and he had a really impactful ministry and legacy. And so I was very excited to learn about Jim, and I was not disappointed. Jim Elliot is a very special man who really had a heart for the Lord. Um, Jim Elliot was born in Portland, Oregon. He was raised by very kind of dedicated Christian parents who really wanted to see their kids all go into ministry or missions. And Jim caught that vision as well, and he really dedicated his life to that. Um, he spent many years just waiting on the Lord to tell him when and where to go. He went to Wheaton College in 1945, which is where he met Elizabeth. They had a very unique relationship because they met, they were close friends, they kept in touch always, and they fell in love, but they both felt like the Lord was keeping them separated for a time. And so um, they so he went to Wheaton College, and he had his correspondence with Elizabeth there, which a lot of the book is actually made up of letters that he wrote to her, also letters that he wrote to his parents, his friends, and journal entries. Um, it's a very personal book because it's a lot of very personal writings that he did, maybe not with the intent of millions of people reading them, but I'm thankful that we have them because it really gave us insight into the heart of a man who truly had just dedicated his life to the Lord. So Jim was very passionate about the Aqua people in Ecuador. They were a kind of an unreached, unengaged tribe. They were very dangerous, violent people who killed on sight, who raged other villages, and just took what they wanted. And Jim understood that they really needed the gospel, and so he was really dedicated to getting it to them. And so um, he and Elizabeth both went to Ecuador separately, actually. And it wasn't until October 8th of 1952 that they were married there in Ecuador. He finally felt the Lord was calling them to marriage. And so that the next 2 years were spent kind of assembling teams, discipling the local people there, which the people that he was reaching in Ecuador had never, they've never heard of Christianity, of God. And so he was starting from the ground up with them. And so he was very dedicated to teaching and reaching them. And he left behind thriving churches, which is an important part of his legacy, is the churches and the people that he left behind in Ecuador. But after he was married to Elizabeth, they spent 2 years. They built, building a home. They had a daughter. They assembled teams, and finally, um, January 6th of 1956, I believe, Jim and his team finally made contact with an Aqua tribesman. They were able to shake his hand and spend some time with him. And Jim wrote about it and about how the Lord had just finally answered his prayers, and he was very very excited about that. And then 2 days later, on January 8th, he and his team were all killed by the Aqua tribe, which Jim would have not have counted as loss. He was perfectly fine with that because the tribe was finally reached, and his death was the door through which other missionaries could come and share with those people. And so he would have counted that as a worthy cause. But Jim he had a good understanding of death. He gave his life to the Lord when he was 6 years old. He laid it down, the Lord picked it up, and he never asked for it back. He was very content to live his life just knowing that it was in the Lord's hands. And so he was really content in every situation. In every trial and hardship, he was content to know that the Lord was in control and he was in the Lord's hands. And so I really think that he is a wonderful role model, someone that we can learn a lot from, and that everyone should definitely maybe spend some time doing some research on, because I mean, he was a man who was committed to the Lord, who was committed to sharing the gospel with all tribes and all nations. And I mean, he was just truly sacrificed his life for the gospel. And I think that's something that everyone should take note of and that everyone should try and replicate in their own lives. So I would highly recommend, it's a short biography. I would highly recommend everyone reading it, and maybe trying to replicate it in their own life, because it was definitely challenging for me in maybe having, it made me examine my own life and look at the things I was unwilling to lay down for the gospel, even simple comforts, and challenging me to do so. And so I would highly recommend it, to everyone. Jim Elliot is a great role model and someone that could be very influential in the life of someone, of any Christian.